Friends podcast is brought to you by Guy and Lady Barrel alcohol-infused cigars. These cigars are absolutely incredible, and they are perfect for any occasion. I particularly enjoy their newest flavor, Mojito. I'm not sure if you heard me correctly. I said Mojito-flavored cigar. I don't think it gets much better than that. Now, cigars are best enjoyed with company, so head on over to alcoholinfusedcigars.com and pick up a 5-cigar box set with any flavor of your choice. These cigars are great for birthdays, weddings. They're a great gift. You can give them for almost any occasion. I particularly love to get a cigar out, go on an evening walk, and pray. But you can use it however you want. Once again, thank you to Guy and Lady Barrel Cigars for sponsoring our show. Go to alcoholinfusedcigars.com and see all they have to offer. Please enjoy responsibly. Hey guys, Kevin Hackenberg, Christians Who Drink Whiskey, and their open-minded friends, and I am so excited to be here in Los Angeles and have these great filmmakers, or at least semi-experienced filmmakers with me. Vince Michelli.
That's right.
Tanner Thomason, and Luke Barnett. And I remember that. I memorized my lines. I'm good. So, welcome to the show, guys. This is Christians Who Drink Whiskey, so let's get started. We got a bottle of Knob Creek here.
All right.
And why don't you start with you, Luke, and grab it.
I hear
pour
it's
low,
Kentucky.
pass it down. It's from Kentucky.
Kentucky bourbon whiskey.
Now we were talking about whiskey has this Kentucky history, but also has Irish. It's a kind of world. It's kind of like a whiskey has like this a lot of great opportunities to make jokes and do that kind of stuff. So, well, thank you, Vince. So, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
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 Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
The reason that you're here is because I didn't have any guests when I came to LA, and I said, these guys are desperate for some attention.
That's it. That's us.
No, Vince and I met through the Act 1 program. I was a student learning to produce. I've been a producer for a while, but getting more into entertainment. And you came on the very end of our session and showed us this great film called Faith-Based.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Faith-Based.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that, and thank you for having us on the show. Faith-Based is a movie about two guys who realize all faith-based movies, whether they're good or bad, make a ton of money, so they decide to make one of their own.
Nice.
And it stars Luke and Tanner, who are here.
Awesome. And tell us about, so you guys, a little backstory for the guest. I'm not sure if it was all of y'all, but Fear Inc. Was that, everybody worked on that?
Yep.
It's in some capacity, yeah.
Yeah. Fear Inc. And then you guys did some Funny or Die material, and then as you were telling the story, you were just like, hey, our career's going down this, action, adventure, if I'm saying that right, kind of genres. You're like, let's steer back toward the comedy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we all started working together doing Funny or Die sketches, which is, a lot of what we did was, satirical commentary that was sort of based around, big TV shows and movies that we've all seen. Like we did stuff on The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones, and we did a thing called A Message to Aaron Sorkin. And that's where we kind of started working together. And then our first movie was a movie called Fear Inc., which is a horror comedy.
Great little film, fun film.
We had a great experience with that. It premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival, and then that kind of led us into producing some movies back to back, which we were really excited to work on, but kind of steered us a bit away from the comedy world. And so after a couple of those projects, we thought, all right, how do we go back into our database, if you will, of projects and go make something that costs no money and is funny and we can just go do with our friends. And that was really the first conversation about how to kind of get faith-based off the ground.
Was faith-based already your database? Was there already a script, or where was it at when you made the decision?
We had basically, I brought a TV pitch idea to Vince that I was like, we should develop this and kind of pitch this TV show, and Tanner helped me with it, and we just kind of got good feedback, and basically it was originally a TV pitch about two guys making a different Christian movie. Actually, in the TV pitch, we were in the movie. We're making a prayer in space, the story of the first prayer ever to be prayed in space. The TV pitch.
I think the Apollo 13 guys probably did that.
Maybe, but that's also
it wasn't documented.
It wasn't about that prayer.
But also, is there proof they went to space?
There we
Let's
go.
be real. Let's be real.
And in the TV pitch, we were pitching Angel on the Farm, was the fictional Christian movie. And It was about a city girl named Roxy who gets into trouble with the law and has to go live on her grandfather's farm, where she meets a talking horse named Angel who teaches her that there's a higher purpose in life. It was our bad Christian movie. We were going to have Jean-Claude Van Damme play the farmer. It was the whole thing.
And Mr. Ed's grandson
Absolutely.
played the talking horse.
And we loved this TV pitch. But we kind of couldn't get past the first season. Like the first season we loved and had this great arc to it.
Where do you take it?
And we were just lost after that. And so we essentially turned the first season into a feature, which is kind of a version of what faith-based became. And it was kind of fun because like Vince said about, we had done these thrillers and these kind of bigger budget, like action-y type movies, which were, you can't complain about like getting paid to produce a feature film. But we kind of went into faith-based with, we would literally say this on set a lot. We basically said, let's go back to our Funny or Die roots and basically treat this as if we're making 15 Funny or Die videos. So 15 days, 15 Funny or Die videos. And there's nothing more fun than making a Funny or Die video where nothing matters, there's no money on the line. It's all about just making the most ridiculous fun thing you can.
Yeah.
And I think that gets lost when money and status comes into play, where all of a sudden you're thinking about the wrong things. And so I think what really worked for this was just like we went into this, like we eventually got bigger things, Jason Alexander and nicer cameras and stuff, but our initial mindset was like, go back to where it started. And
I want to say, so I started this nonprofit called Funny&Amen, which you can abbreviate F and Amen. And my mantra has been to like do one day comedy videos, because in a day you can do a 1 minute, 5 minute, 8 minute little comedy short, whatever it turns out to be. And I think that's a really, you just inspired me to say like, to do 15 of them.
I would challenge you to say you could do 3 in a day. Like that was like back in the day when we were like shooting a lot of shorts and whatnot. There was a thing where like there are things that you can always get. You can always get a camera. Yeah. You can always get actors, right? So it's like you can find those pieces. And so there were some guys that I used to make skits with, and what we would do is we'd save our money, and then we'd go, we can afford 1 day of production. Yeah. And we'd shoot 3 skits in that 1 day.
In October and November, me with a group of an acting studio, we're getting together to bring in other writers to do that whole kind of collective thing and try to, work them together and do like 3 in a day.
Yeah.
Three in a day, 2 in a weekend.
It's a good mindset.
6 in a weekend. Yeah.
Well, you also learn like who you like to work with. You build your network. You get to practice on something that's that's not high. It doesn't have, it's low risk. Because it's short and. You get to, if it doesn't work, and then you go on to the next one.
Yeah. You're not burned out and hating each other by like,
like most feature films.
There you go.
Yeah, right.
Doesn't happen. No, we're all love and triangles after the.
At least for the first 3 days.
Yeah, for 3 days at least.
after 3 weeks of overnights, 18-hour days, it's all love and roses. Yeah. So what? You guys did this. If I can share, and we can edit out if not, but you guys did this on weekends, right?
Yeah.
3-day weekends.
Yep.
That's like so old school film style, and
crazy.
And I tell everyone that's the worst way to do it.
So there were kind of 2 things going on. I feel like the weekends thing, like I feel like that part of that might be. So at this point in time, I was working for CBS, and so I literally could not take off. But I had enough sick days that I would take off every other Friday as a sick day. And so my sick days I used to come and shoot. Then I would shoot Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where these guys would shoot Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There'd be every week. So then the weekends thing played into like my schedule. But then also The other thing is, like, if you ask someone to come out and shoot the weekends, they might be willing to work for you a little cheaper than if you're asking them for a full weekend.
That honestly, why you tell people it's always the wrong way to do it, and I do agree. It's the best way to do it is just knock it all out.
Can.
You know, this worked because we could go to Crew and say you can still get your well-paying commercial jobs. Where we don't have the budget to pay what a commercial pays.
Would you, after having done what you guys and me as a producer would say, that's not the best way to do it? After having done it, had success with faith-based, would you do that again for more shoots like this, or it has to, the script has to work too, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it can't be a low budget all set in one location and you do it on weekend.
Yeah, it depends.
It's harder.
It depends on the project, and like Luke said, our initial thought at the beginning of this was like, how do we grab friends and our iPhones and go shoot a movie?
Yeah,
and
we were going to shoot it on our phones. That was the beginning.
And so the initial thought was, we're going to have to do this on weekends because we're going to be asking people that are working during the week to come work on this thing. And that, cameras got better, cast got bigger, budget got a little bit bigger, but the schedule stayed the same because we wanted to have high caliber crew working on our movie.
Whether you shoot on an iPhone or a Red, you guys shot a Red, right?
We shot two Reds.
Yeah, but when the crew, the people behind it are the most important. The gray matter is in front of the camera, behind the camera is the most important.
Sure.
Yeah. And one of the cool things was every Friday and every Saturday when the crew would show up, because this was a fun movie to work on and people were laughing the whole time, and we like to have a good time on set. We don't like to run our sets in an uncomfortable manner. There's no yelling. We have a no asshole policy on set.
Where's the fun in that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
People would show up on
and
Fridays,
so they let Tanner show up.
Yeah, right.
They still let
Tanner
was the exception to that rule.
Still let me in.
We had people showing up on Fridays saying, you know what, I was working on my gig all week and I could not stop thinking about coming back to the faith-based set. And that was like, okay, there's a part of this that was exciting and it felt student film-ish, it felt run and gun because we were doing it on the weekends. Yeah. So it did give an energy to the project that we didn't have on our first three movies that we did traditionally, where we shot, the short comedy.
And it was kind of interesting too, because like the first weekend of shooting, like day one was basically just me, and then day 2 and 3 were me and Tanner, really, aside from like some people coming in and out real quick. And it was I was a little nervous about establishing the tone in that first weekend. And you could tell that everybody had such a great time that first weekend that then when the much more respectable cast started to show up, everybody was excitedly surprised.
Well, people actually knew what they were doing.
It started with these two guys. And then it ended with Jason Alexander.
If it started with Jason Alexander, by the end it's just Tanner. I think people would have been really disappointed.
They would have quit on us.
Day one, it was just me. Day 2, Tanner showed up, and people were at least okay, this can get better. And then Lance Reddick shows up by weekend 2, and you're like, all right.
There was literally a point at which Luke and I had been shooting for a couple days, and we'd practice a scene, and everybody's tweaking lights and getting everything ready to go. And then I'll never forget, Lance Reddick shows up on his first day, which, by the way, the night before he was at the John Wick 3 premiere in New York City.
Left early. Not New York City. Not New York City. LA one, but he didn't go to the after party so that he would be fresh.
Photos of him with Keanu Reeves, and then the next day he shows up to hang out with these idiots. And literally, Luke and I, it had been a couple days when we were working scenes and practicing things, and rehearsing, and it's just how you want it. It's just like shooting a sketch. And then Lance shows up to do his very first rehearsal. And it's just business is going on, people are working, and then Lance begins his first line. He has that Lance Reddick voice. And everyone stops, and it was the quietest that our set had ever been. And everyone slowly turned and looked at
they all
Lance
had a moment
as
of
he's
this is what acting can be?
Yeah. All of a sudden they were wait, hold on, this is what a good person sounds.
I drowned these other 2 guys out days ago.
You guys seen Hail Caesar?
Yeah.
It's like the scene at the end of Hail Caesar, and everyone's like, "What?" And the sound guy takes off his earbuds.
It was 100% like that.
Awesome. Oh, this is a real movie. Okay.
It was literally Lance Reddick opened his mouth and the voice of God came out, and everyone was like,
"Oh,
that's awesome."
Yeah. And it was at an axe throwing bar, so that. Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't the dinner scene. The dinner scene. Your family. Tell me about your family in the movie, Luke.
So Lance Reddick plays my dad. If you don't know Lance Reddick, he's the star of The Wire. He's the concierge in all the John Wick movies. He's on Bosch right now.
His complexion's a little darker than yours.
He's a fantastic African American actor. He often, and by often I mean like all the time, plays very intimidating characters. And
he's always that guy in Destiny.
Yeah, everybody. It's weird. I'm not a video game guy, but the amount of people that know Lance Reddick from a video game are more than who know him from any other movies.
Of course, yeah, we're in the wrong business.
But he, So in the movie, I'm adopted by an African American family, and a lot of the thought with that was, in movies and TV, you have seen an affluent white family adopt an African or African American child from poverty a lot of times. You've rarely seen an African American family adopt a white kid. You've got The Jerk, you've got a few different specific movies, but I don't know that you've ever had an affluent African American family adopt a white kid who ends up essentially being a failure.
Yeah.
And that was like very interesting to us in the story.
That's great.
And it was kind of funny because Lance, he was the first kind of major actor to come on. We owe a lot to Lance. He's an executive producer on the movie, and because Lance came on, and all of a sudden, like, people who might not even read a script that stars Luke and Tanner will read a script that stars Lance Reddick. And Lance was interesting because he read the script and he wanted to play Nikki Steele, the Jason Alexander character, and he just thought it was so funny, and he was like, I've never done something like this, I want to play Nikki Steele. And we essentially said, you can play whatever you want. Like, you want to play Nikki Steele, you're Nikki Steele, but can we talk on the phone? And we ended up having a conversation with him and kind of lightly explained the reasoning for wanting him to play my dad, and he was like, all right, let me think on it a little bit. And I don't remember if it was the next day or a couple days later. He basically got an email from his agent that just said Lance wants to play Pastor Mike now, and so it was great. It was excellent.
We also pitched him on the idea of Luke and his dad in the movie have such an integral relationship to the story that we wanted somebody who could really be believable when you're in this world that's a little bit heightened reality. And, some of the things some of the jokes that we're making are a tiny bit over the top. Although most of this movie is grounded in real experiences that we've had, we wanted to make sure the character that Luke kind of wrote and we kind of talk about as being the main roadblock for these guys making their movie is believable and grounds the scenes that he's in.
He's also so endearing that even though he's kind of the guy that's like our roadblock, in the movie, Lance is such a good actor that you feel for him,
Yeah, Lance isn't a bad guy. He represents probably the truth of most of the realities of these scenarios. Like, these two guys probably should be able to do this.
It's a very father figure to be like, what. I want to believe in you, son, but I've seen enough.
That scene is explicitly in the film.
Yeah, it's great. That's a great. It's so fun with comedy to explore those truths and to take them to that.
Lance also is just such a good actor. I mean, everybody in the movie gives great performances, but Lance is such a good actor that now that we've seen the movie so many times, every time we watch it, we have a conversation after about how just Lance really grounds it. Like Vince was saying, a lot of it's elevated, even if it's.
Vince and I are over here looking at Luke's script, and we're like, I don't know if we want to do these lines. How do you think this was versus Lance treated it like it was the Bible. And he performed it to the T. Every column, every period, everything.
There was
perfect.
I think it was the week before Lance was showing up. He told Luke how much work he was doing preparing for his lines. And I remember Luke calling me going, I haven't done as much work.
And I wrote it.
And I'm the lead character of this movie. And I haven't done as much work.
I've never been an actor so prepared. Lance would text me at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, and he would be like, hey, sorry to text you so late. Can we just hop on a call real quick? And I'd be like, okay, let me call Lance Reddick, and I'd call him, and he'd be like, so I'm prepping this scene, and I'm like, what scene? And he tells me, and I'm looking at the date, and I'm like, we don't shoot that for 3 weeks. And I'm like, we can talk through it. I haven't read it since I wrote it.
probably have a better idea.
How do you guys portray this?
As a matter of fact, if you were playing a character of Luke, how did you?
Hold on, let me hit record. How did you deliver that?
No, it's okay. Give me a line.
Please, I'm recording.
Can you run lines with me?
Please.
So tell me about the rest of the cast. You got an amazing. When we saw the film, we were privileged to see in advance of the film. Like the cast you got is just. It's not just Lance and not just Jason, but like you got a great cast of people there.
Yeah, I mean it's a long list of really amazing people. You know, Lance Reddick, Margaret Cho, David Koechner, Jason Alexander. You've got Christoph Sanders, who's
Last
Man Standing. You've got Marlon Young, who you know we've known for a little while, but was on Entourage and
Family Matters. You've been on.
How many people?
Richard really
you guys
has
have
been
been
in 500 movies.
Yeah,
It's just like we worked with a bunch, and he's amazing.
Well, it was a really good combo of like somebody asked the other day about like how we did casting and stuff, and we could talk about that all day. But like what I think worked really well was that there's kind of essentially three types of people that are in this movie, and they all blend together really well. And those are the people that are our close personal friends that we think are great actors and found roles for. Then there are people who might not be as close personal friends, but we do somewhat know or have worked with multiple times that came out to kind of right off the bat add some credibility, but they also knew us well enough that we could ask more time of them. So like Marlon's a good example, Richard Really is a good example of people that like, they're not such close friends of ours that we see them every week or something, but we know Richard's face, we've worked with them, and they know us well enough to say, I'll come out for 7 days, versus like the Jason Alexanders were kind of like, all right, let's see if we can get him for a day or 2 days or something, you know. And then there's the Jasons and the Margarets and stuff that were kind of like literal shots in the dark that we just were like, let's give it a go. And
So just to prep my audience, because my audience, you know, it's Christians who drink whiskey and open-minded friends. It's a little bit of everybody, but the Christians, you know, I hang out with enough Christians that, you know, this is not the movie for my mom. My show is not the movie. It's not the podcast for my mom. It's called faith-based, but it's not a faith-based movie. In terms of the church market.
It's not in and of itself.
R-rated for language.
Yeah, in and of itself. It's R-rated for language.
It's R-rated, yeah.
There's a bunch of F words. I don't know if you're bleeping this out or not. There's a bunch.
Funny is an F word. You abbreviate F.
Yeah, the single syllabic F word is in there multiple times. It's set against the backdrop of a faith-based film, and so like in and of itself, this film is not a faith-based film. That being said, like you guys saw the movie, so like by the end of the film, these guys make the right decisions, and so I would think if you looked at their actions throughout the film, is they learn a lesson and they wind up making spoiler alert, they wind up making the correct decision at the end, which is something that you would expect from a faith-based film. Now, that being said, I think that people who watch faith-based films and seek out these films, I think those people will connect with this movie just as much or more than anybody else.
If you're gonna write off a movie for the F word, or you know, we'll beep it out, mom, fuck, or shit, or ass, or any bitch, whatever. I mean, TV shows George Carlin, come back and you can deliver all of them, you know. But I guess the question is, if you're gonna rule out a movie because of that, then this is not the movie for you.
Absolutely.
But if you like a good movie with a talk that deals with faith, deals with church relationships, family relationships, where people go to church and don't go to church, or if you want, I got a question for you. Prayer in Space. What's that rated? Is that rated R?
Oh, no.
Prayer in Space is total G.
That's a straight Christian movie.
Yeah.
We really want to make Prayer in Space, and we want to make that as a faith-based movie.
100%.
Absolutely.
I will come to LA. I will do it.
You want to be an astronaut in Prayer in Space? We'll cast you as an astronaut in Prayer in Space right now.
Well, one of the issues I've always had with Christian movies, and by Christian movies I mean like 99.9% of Christian movies, is that because they are specifically targeting their audience, and they know that if they say fuck, then they will alienate being able to like have a church encourage that movie. They cannot write characters as real life characters.
People will talk like real people.
Yeah, you can't talk like real people because real people. And if you're having a Christian movie about a drug addict, he's not saying "Gosh darn, my heroin's up," and so it's kind of like these,
Gosh darn, my heroin's up.
You need to write that line.
Gosh darn, my heroin's all gone. My dad would go see it. Southern dang.
Gosh darn.
That's the backstory of Parents' Face. Gosh darn, my hair was gone.
That's how she gets to Mars.
So my dad's church literally is one of those churches where when any of these movies come out, they rent the theater for the Sunday, they take the van loads of members out. That's all like fully accurate for my actual dad's church. And my dad will text me every time and he'll say, "Have you heard about this one?" And I'll look it up and I'm like, "This is terrible looking." And a lot of those reasons, you can't make a real looking, like even sports movies. It's like you look at these Christian sports movies, and there's a lot of them if you start looking into it, and there's a moment that's just kind of like, why didn't you guys just make Rudy or Remember the Titans or one of these like really great sports movies that has the same values and storyline of the hero that you're aiming for in this, but they're portrayed as real people, and it's a good movie.
And they're also not trying to shove religion down here.
So we would make this movie, and granted, again, it's by no means a faith-based movie. We weren't trying to make a faith-based movie, but we did. There's certain storyline stuff that we like in certain faith-based movies, the same as there's good storylines in Rudy. But one thing I was very adamant in writing the script is that we also wanted to make a comedy that we would want to go watch. Like we wanted to make an old school, a Wedding Crashers, something that was just like funny because it's funny.
Yeah.
And the characters that Tanner and I are portraying are two 30-something guys that like live in the valley and drink beer and play video games. And it's like we have to talk like those two guys would talk.
Yeah.
So it's
And to be fair, we did. We premiered the movie, at the Santa Barbara Film Festival earlier this year, and we did have a number of Christians in the audience that, at the end of the screening, came up to us and said, "You know what?" And again, our faith-based is not a faith-based movie, and that wasn't our intention. But we did have a number of people come up to us and say, "The themes in your movie represent more of what I wish faith-based movies would have."
That's Lance, Lance couldn't. The last minute, Lance couldn't go to our premiere because he was shooting a movie in New Orleans. So he asked me the week of. He was like, "I'm so bummed. Can I see the movie?"
Yeah.
So I sent him a link to it to watch, and he called me that night, and he said, "I don't know if you're gonna like me saying this, but this is what I wish Christian movies were."
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting way to put it because it was kind of like these beats that people need and like in Christian movies were there, but it still feels more like real story.
I had this born again experience about 7 years ago, and I decided to it was a comedy experience where I realized they are. I realized I was a hypocrite, and it was like this wonderful I looked back at my story. This is a whole arc. And and I started to write my story into a comedy, and I was like, all right, but it's. I wrote this movie called What the Halo, about an angel, a hippie, and a youth pastor that go on a road trip together.
All right.
And I just all right, well, this angel comes to Earth, and she's gonna be tempted by, never did things ate chocolate or told lies, whatever, and what's the progression of tasting? I'm like, oh, there's got to be a scene near the end of the movie where she's doing a line of coke,
Sure.
I just saw, as I started pitching it around, I saw that the Christian audience, who I thought were yearning for movies faith-based, maybe without as many F-bombs, would appreciate comedy. Mm-hmm. And I realized there was that audience is broken down into three subsets. I started to pitch this, go into crowdfunding, and there were people that were like, whoa, you're making a comedy film? You're not gonna make fun of Christians, are you?
Uh-huh.
I was like, yeah, well, I was. So I rule you out. The next audience, we're not gonna make fun of. Not gonna do anything crude, are you? Mm-hmm. And I was like, have you guys read the Bible?
Yep.
And I was ruled you out. And then I ran into these grandmothers, and I'm like, what's your favorite movie? And these three little old ladies were like, oh, we just got done watching The Hangover. And I'm like,
we're going to Vegas tomorrow.
I'm like, Grandma, you're the face of someone who loves the super safe Christian movie, but you Like I didn't picture you watching The Hangover, and we got into like, what's your favorite Christian? What's your favorite movie? And I was like, oh, I love Something About Mary. And the other old grandma was like, oh, she got the semen in the hair. It's great. And I'm like, grandmother, stop.
Again, come on.
Again. So I think there's an audience in the faith-based world at your dad's church. There's an audience of members that are going to say, "Hey, the dramas aren't for me."
I think.
Sorry, not to step in your toes. I think there's this tricky thing, not to like, and maybe this is whiskey hitting me, but there's this like tricky thing. There's this.
Tanner's gonna sleep.
Here we go. Get ready, guys.
We've all finished our first glass.
Okay, here we go. Here we go. We're getting real. We're getting real about this.
I'm going to hell.
First off, I'm going straight down. JK, I'm not. There's like a tricky thing. It's like once you bring the context, once the context of like, is this a Christian film? Once that has entered the conversation, that sort of like flavors or colors the conversation, right? Because it's like that's a lens through which people would view this content.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it's like, does this content match the lens for which it is being viewed through? Versus, is this a piece of content and is this a story that I might just connect with as a human being?
Yeah.
Right? Versus like, is this a Christian movie? Then you would evaluate it differently than just, is this a movie that connects with me? So those are two different things.
There's a guy I connected with, and he used to write for PureFlix movies. If you know PureFlix, they're like the Christian whatever. He wrote this comedy movie. They pitched it. They shot it. They took it to this like this pastor's son. Got the youth group together every Sunday. They watch comedy films. So it was like perfect group to give a audience screening. They watched the movie. He was out. The producer was outside the room listening to them laugh and laugh and laugh. He's like, all right, cool, evaluations. And then they're like, fill out the evaluations. And the kid was like, so do you want us to fill this out as like a Christian audience person or me? And he was just like, you.
Yeah, be yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that dichotomy. What's that dichotomy? Is that religion?
Well,
I
personally think it's like when you hear the term faith-based film, it's almost that it's less about what the movie is, and it's more the audience that's meant to watch that movie, which is different than you have in a normal movie.
It's a market, not a.
It's like the faith-based film. A faith-based film is meant for faith-based people. Sure. It's not just meant for people.
Yeah.
The left-handed movie is only for left-handed people.
Or it would just be a drama.
If you talk to people that work on faith-based movies, we had a number of crew members that have experienced working on faith-based movies. Some of the cast have been in faith-based movies. They all had similar things to say in that, the producers that are making these movies fully understand what they're making.
Yeah.
They know that they're making a movie that's targeted to a specific audience that's going to make a certain amount of money, so it's got to fit in that box.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, is it's, of course, like everything else, it's like the dollars are driving what you're doing.
Do you guys, having done Funny or Die stuff, having done, some of the horror comedy, like Fear Inc. and whatever, this is your first feature comedy, right? Or
straight comedy.
Fear was horror comedy.
Horror comedy,
yeah.
I guess the question is that a with all, like, when I was thinking about our class discussed the film after seeing it, and there's a whole diverse group of Christian producer wannabes like myself, discussing it, and it was like, who's the audience for this? So do you guys say, hey, the Seth Rogen audience, or the, you mentioned Wedding Crashers, that kind of, have you guys kind of clearly defined your audience, or because it's a more general market? In the Christian world, there's a lot of like rules that you put on.
Well, don't get me wrong. I think if we were strictly making this movie to make money, then we would have been smarter to either just make a faith-based comedy where we take out all the F-bombs and don't have them talk like real people, and just make a faith-based comedy, or probably just like skewering religion and saying like, Christians are idiots, let's just like push into that, you know what I mean? And we didn't do either one of those. There's definitely like a world where like we're gonna have a problem because of that. But at the same time, while I still think there's a broad range of people that are gonna like this movie, if I were to hone in on like who our niche audience is, it's probably people like I would consider all three of us at different stages, in terms of like, you're either a a liberal-minded Christian, or you're maybe an ex-Christian, but like grew up in that world and that church and finds it funny, but has some sort of like direct connection to this world that we're talking about.
Yeah,
I think both those people are going to laugh at this movie, even if you're, there's extreme conservative versions of that the minute the F-bomb is dropped at the beginning of the movie, they're going to turn it off, and that's fine. But those people, honestly, probably wouldn't have clicked this movie in the first place. Yeah. I think the majority of people that at least have a connection to this world, they're going to laugh at it.
Yeah.
So
that's not true, because of the name, you guys got some amazing...
There might be some mistake.
Listen, when you say the name, what you're talking about, genius marketing?
Genius marketing, it's so good.
I'm going to fill these glasses back up.
So we say all that about the audience, and then we find out that the biggest distributor in Japan is releasing this movie pretty wide. So I guess Japan is going to be
that's our main audience.
So we don't really know.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about the free press you got as you were starting to film. That's a great story. I clicked on as you were getting ready to speak the day before. I googled you guys, Googled the movie, and I found the trailer. Oh, I got to watch the trailer. And it wasn't a trailer at all. It was the two of you guys on the couch,
literally reading real comments aloud.
Tell me that story. That's such a good story.
Well, so on day one of production, like first off, you have to like sit in our shoes for just a minute. We're gonna make this ragtag thing. It's just gonna be us, just gonna be our friends. Okay, and then like things beyond our wildest imaginations happen. It was like, okay, we're able to get these great cameras. Okay, we're able to like get these like bigger cast members. But you know what? We're still shooting it in our living rooms.
Yeah.
And so it's like we're in my house shooting in my living room, and we're getting ready to go, and someone's like, I don't remember if it's you or if it was you, which one of you guys is like, hey, we got written up on Fox News. It's like day one of production, and we've been written up on Fox News, and Fox News has written this article about how we're trashing Christian films, which we are not, but of course they're doing their clickbait thing, which websites do. And what they don't know is that's the best thing that could happen to us, is to make a bunch of people mad so that they see it and are aware of it.
Yeah.
You just can't buy that publicity.
It was so good. It was so. I think that like you back to the churches and what they do to promote the content they want. They also promote heavily content they don't want you to see.
Content they want to make you angry.
Yeah, I just watched the first episode of Lucifer, based on a Christian
not to watch it.
Tell me not to
Don't watch
this.
Don't watch this.
What if you do? Don't watch it. Well, I better find out.
I gotta know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I think what will be hilarious will be there's no world where if this does remotely well in terms of just getting out there, that there's a group of people who watch and love this movie and then secretly tell other people. Like, they're not going into church on Sunday being like, y'all see Faith-Based? But they're texting their, like, two trusted friends being like, did you see Faith-Based?
Yeah. That's great.
But side note, real quick, is like, we got written up on Fox News, and we got written up on Breitbart. And I think it's like unfortunately, we live in, like, this big knee-jerk reaction culture right now. We just do. And we knew, basically, the trailer that you saw was something that we knew that we got in the Santa Barbara Film Festival, and we knew that we needed to release a piece of content to promote that film festival. Santa Barbara's close enough to LA. We could talk our friends into coming to see this movie. That would be great. We could like maybe sell out the theater, maybe. And so we need to release a piece of content, but we don't want to release the trailer yet. We want to hold the trailer because that's our major piece of marketing for the actual release. So we need to come up with something else. So Vince had edited a trailer that we'd shared between us and like in the investors and like just internally, and we're like, this is great. And then the Fox News articles came out, and we're like, what if we like read out loud, like like celebrities read mean tweets? What if we read the funniest comments out loud?
Perfect.
And the most beautiful thing happened, which is like we made this thing, we didn't know what was going to happen, and then Fox News and Breitbart wrote about us again.
About the trailer?
Yeah. Breitbart had my favorite one because they verbatim said, we were trying to avoid responding, but we just have to.
Yeah. They said we took the bait. We took it. We didn't plan for any of this to happen initially. The Fox News and Breitbart hate, but doing this fun teaser trailer where these guys were reading the comments, and I think it was Tanner's initial idea, which was genius. The fact that they rewrote articles and there were thousands of more comments after that was just like, okay, well, that's what we were hoping was going to happen, and you did it.
Now we got you.
That's so good. Dude, I can talk to you guys forever. I feel like we're, kindred souls. Fucking kindred souls.
Whiskey brother.
It's the Knob Creek. This is a 100
sponsored by Knob Creek. And by sponsored, I mean we bought it for $39.99.
This episode of the Christians Who Drink Whiskey and Their Open-Minded Friends podcast is brought to you by Dad's Hat Pennsylvania Rye Whiskey. Dad's Hat is real rye whiskey made the right way. This month's featured bottle is Classic Rye. Barrel aged for at least 6 months in charred new oak quarter cask allows the genuine rye flavor to evolve quickly. As a result, this small batch whiskey is ensured of reaching the right balance of complexity and smoothness. The final product is a very smooth spirit that delivers upfront spice that rye is known for while finishing with a full, round mouthfeel. To find a distributor of this award-winning whiskey, head on over to dadshatrye.com, or if you're a Pennsylvania resident, you can have any of their delicious rye whiskeys delivered right to your door. Trust the distillery with over 200 years of American distilling tradition, Dad's Hat Rye. Please enjoy responsibly. So, this is about, if it was this is part of the show where I start turning it on the tide.
Turning the corner.
Let's go there.
Let's do it.
Go there.
I'm into it.
The question I ask everybody on the show is, what do you think of Jesus? There's 3 of you, so don't go off on too long, but I'm curious. So that's I love Jesus. I don't really care what you think, but I'm curious. What do you think?
Man, wow, that is what I'm going to ask you. I don't care what you think. Tell me what you think. Also, fuck you.
That's going to be censored.
Yeah, they'll link that for sure.
Who wants to go first?
Who's going first?
I'm in the middle, so I
Luke,
definitely can't go first.
I want to go with Luke, if you don't mind.
Oh, man.
Oh,
Luke,
boy,
you wrote this movie. I'm getting your dad's a pastor. You're a pastor's kid, man. That's like...
He's a PK.
Woo!
Yeah.
PK. You Tanner may be a church guy. He knows the terminology.
Well, it's tricky. I hate to give like a vague answer. I'm not trying to give a vague answer. I think that Jesus, in terms of being a teacher, and I don't know what the best word is for that, but like.
They called him a rabbi, I think, once.
Well, sure, but
means teacher.
I guess I more mean as an example to what we should live to and be as human beings, and in terms of like his teachings and like I've read the New Testament probably 4 times from going to Christian school since I was 3, and in terms of his teachings and as an example of who we should be as human beings and how we should set out to live our lives, and an everyday sort of like, if you emulated this and tried to take these lessons into your real life, you would live a great life and be good to others, I think is as good of an example as it gets. I would probably say that I don't necessarily take things literally in the sense that, this idea that when I was 4 and they were like, do you ask Jesus into your heart and that's how you go to heaven sort of thing, I think I wouldn't put myself on that page, but in terms of like Jesus as a teacher and as an example, I think is as good as it gets.
Cool. Quick question: do you have a label for yourself? Do you fall into any of the other like
categorize yourself?
This will be in the YouTube description. Luke Barnett.
I don't care, but this is going to be the headline.
I'm their faith-based film.
There we go.
I definitely do not feel like I have a label. The term agnostic is so. To me, the term agnostic is wrongly used often. But if the term agnostic simply means I don't know for sure, then I'm an agnostic.
Yeah, I don't know. The title is I don't know for sure. That's great. Awesome.
I don't know for sure. Do I? Yeah. I don't know.
What do you think the? I'm curious. When you say that agnostic has a bad connotation,
I think people lump agnostic in with atheist very often.
Oh yeah.
And I think atheist is atheist is someone that is saying there is not a God.
Yeah.
I am saying, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, I think this is a great way to look at life, and I think this is, like, great teachings that I can follow. I don't think that, like, I have to ask Jesus into my heart and that does anything. I think I can follow the teachings and stuff and lead a great life, but I would say I'm agnostic to if I know for sure that Jesus is God.
Yeah, the definition of agnostic, not the judgmental, like, oh, you're over there with the atheist.
Yeah.
Cool.
Whoa! That's good. That's good.
Oh my God!
I like that.
You ever seen?
Confetti.
Remember the Matrix?
I've never.
What happened like that? I just had a Will Ferrell old school moment of like, what happened? Did I love that guy?
I've worked with Luke and been close friends with him for 6-7 years now. I've never heard that full answer before. So
You're on the couch, man.
I was on
therapy couch.
I was sitting on the edge of my seat like you were. Like,
Where's he to go with it?
Vince, Tanner, who's the?
Do you want to go?
Let's go this way. I'll be last.
Okay. All right. Okay. So what are my thoughts about Jesus?
What do you think about Jesus?
Wow. I have a lot of thoughts. About Jesus. I'm not a preacher's child, but whatever is as close as possible to that, that is what I am. Like I have multiple Bibles at home, highlighted and annotated for my own thoughts in the margins, for sure. I truly, this might not be like the type of answer you want. Somewhere along the lines of things, I think he got lost. And I don't mean that through his actions or through the stories or the ideas or through the things that we should attach to him and the lessons we're supposed to learn. But I mean the people who are like, this thing is built on the foundation of the Jesus. This thing is built on the foundation of like the red letter books. And somewhere, somehow, we have on the train of Christianity to a certain degree, we have like gone to the back and like lifted out this pin, and the caboose just coasted that way while we kept going in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And I think, and to me, nothing could be more clear than like there are a lot of lessons that are very explicit, very simple, that are done through actions, and explicit things that this person or however you may interpret it said in these books. But for whatever reason, for being a country that is populated by more people who say that they follow these things than any other type of thought, for whatever reason, we seem to find ourselves in a world in which they navigate their lives in a different direction. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I think.
It's interesting, you guys have made a movie with a lot of explicit language, and you use the word explicit about the things that the red letters.
There's
some explicit language in there that's not being followed. You don't. And it's not leading them not following. It's not leading to them to speak explicit language. Right. But it's also not letting them to live explicit lives.
Well, like nothing can be more clear than Jesus' stance on healthcare. Nothing could be more clear. Truly, nothing could be more clear. But we seem to, for whatever reason, we've like gotten to this spot. And don't get me wrong, I believe in separation of church and state. Like you should, if you're watching this and you're like, I'm not into Jesus, but you're watching this and you're into anything else, I say good, great, wonderful. If that works for you, and that helps you bring like something positive in the world, then I 1,000,000% support that. But I think all of those ideas tend to have a common positive ground. One of those things being like, he healed Lazarus and he didn't ask him for anything.
Yeah.
Or not just Lazarus, brought Lazarus back from the dead, but like the other one. So that's what I think.
You got it now too. Good job.
Yeah. Sorry. Thanks. Man, guys, wow, we are doing it today. Very proud. We are doing it today.
All right. So what's the next question?
Vince.
Cheese.
Yeah. Time to wrap this up.
Got another bottle. Wow, is that Luke and Tanner? Well, no, you're
very good. Very good answers.
Vince, what do you think of Jesus?
So I'm a fan of Jesus. If you want to put a label on it, I would consider myself a Christian. I think if you are familiar with the Bible and Jesus' teachings, I'm in the middle of rereading the New Testament right now.
The newest Testament.
The newest. We actually did a short called the Newest Testament. Another guy that just slipped out, Freudian slip. There's very little about Jesus and his teachings that I think you can argue with, and I think Christians have done an amazing job at twisting what Jesus has said. Like Tanner said this in a way, and Luke even said it in a way. It's like Christians and a lot of churches have really done Jesus and the Bible, they just have done a really bad job of representing the very simple things that I think Jesus talks about. And it is pretty black and white when you read the red letters in the Bible, what Jesus is trying to tell us. And we've gotten so far from that like it's tainted, Christianity. It's tainted the church. If you say you're a Christian, it almost, especially when you're in Los Angeles and a very liberal Los Angeles, it's almost a joke. You don't want to call yourself a Christian because you're looked at a different way. But I think that's because Christians have done this, crazy job of just like making it their own thing. When it's like, look, this is what he's saying is like, who could disagree with what Jesus is saying? And a lot of what he says is very controversial. He got angry. He flipped tables. He didn't like religious people. And and not to get political, but if we're going to get political, if he was here today, was sitting with us, I think he'd fall way more on the liberal spectrum than he would on the conservative spectrum. And so I think, it just gets really tricky because, I think he had a lot of really cool things to say. And I think if everyone just took what he said and not what Christians say he said to heart, I think we'd be in a much better world. I think it'd be a lot more simple than it is today. Yeah. I know that's kind of a utopian way of thinking, but I don't think of Jesus as, this blonde-haired white dude who walks through, the Middle East and just said amazing things. He said, he got pissed off at people. And so I think he's a very interesting character that's worth people studying and having their own opinion on what he says, as opposed to taking, Christians' opinions on what he said, because everyone likes to make it their own.
Right. Thanks for sharing your individual opinions on Jesus.
I give my testimony in a while.
I don't know if that qualifies as testimony.
It's changed.
I don't know if that's
testify. So that question, thank you, because you kind of touched on where that question originated, which was being with a bunch of Christians and then saying, this is what Jesus says, and there's a Bible on a shelf, and we're like, let's actually go open it up and like let's kind of just let's just study it as humans that just can read a book.
Look at it.
We have our own brains. We can make our own.
Yeah, we have. The next question originated soon after that when I was hanging out with my Catholic turned atheist friends, and I just spent a night.
That's a transition.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Yeah.
I just spent a night in our mutual friend's house where I had not seen the visitor that she thought might come to my bedroom in the night, this, little ghost boy. And I was I was driving with my director friend, who's an atheist, and I was like, do you believe in ghosts? And he was like, yeah, I guess I do.
That's interesting.
Yes. So the next question is, because it's like, whatever if you're agnostic or an atheist or Hindu, whatever. Christian, the next question is about the paranormal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
About the spiritual realm. Have you ever had a paranormal or a supernatural or a spiritual experience?
Oh man.
There's been times in my life where I have thought, now this has been years. This has been years, and a lot of my thinking has has changed since then. But there were times in my teens and well into my early 20s that I very much thought that I had a religious experience, and sometimes this manifested itself in something in terms of a sense of dread or a sense of anxiety that I had, that when I at that point in time at that point in time in my life I was still very much into scripture and the guidance that I could find through there, and so there would be times where it's I would be in a place of high anxiety and then able to find a place of a high calm, and I certainly at that point in time interpreted
But
that.
looking back, you don't?
Looking back, it's hard for me to reinterpret it, I should say, looking back, because part of the way that I got to anxiety in some of these circumstances were certainly dependent upon how I would
interpreted them.
Correct. I don't know if that's a good answer or not.
No, there's not a good answer.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm telling you, there's no wrong answers,
I don't know if I've ever had any paranormal experiences, but it's funny that you asked that, because just last night, I mentioned I'm rereading the New Testament. I was reading Luke. This is not a Bible study, but I was reading Luke last night, and there's a lot of mentions of Jesus. There are a lot of mentions of demons coming out of the demon. Jesus was pulling demons out of people's bodies, and just over and over again about this person was possessed, and there was a legion of demons here, and I went down a Google rabbit hole of what is a demon, and I just started looking this stuff up, and I got to this article of this atheist psychiatrist who spent 25 years with a Catholic priest as the go-to person to show up to exorcisms.
Oh, very cool.
And it was fascinating because this guy, he's still, as of when he wrote the article, is still an atheist, but would absolutely conclude, because he would show up to these exorcisms to basically say this person's not clinically crazy, or there's no definition that we have come up with for what this person is. So my only conclusion is that it's probably he is probably possessed, and this is somebody who's an atheist.
So this is the movie we're gonna make.
Yeah,
that
right?
person was hired by the church.
Yes, he was hired by the Catholic Church.
Before the priest could do his thing, they got to make sure.
He would give an assessment that, and a lot. He admitted most of the cases were people that he would define as some version on the scale of this is their diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
And he said every once in a while there were people that's there's no classification. They would know things about the people around them. They would start speaking languages like Latin that they have no knowledge of, and lots of different things. And he's there's no other definition that I can give this person. And he said I wouldn't classify them as possessed, just to be clear, but I would tell them there's nothing else here that I can classify them, so they're most likely possessed.
This is in your court now.
So I can't say they're possessed. All I can tell you is I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
My training says I don't know. I'm an agnostic about demons.
Yeah.
But your training is.
But there's plenty of records of people being possessed and what that experience is like, and so I 100% believe in the paranormal. I've just never experienced it, and I've never seen a ghost walking through my living room or anything like that. So, but I thought that was really interesting coming from an atheist who was
"What was
this
article
world?"
From?
That's very interesting.
I have to look it up because I forget.
Catholic Today.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Is it Catholic Today? The
Become
people
a
who are
Christian
anti-Biden?
right
Isn't that their
now.
It was the open-minded atheist. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Luke, any paranormal, supernatural experiences?
No, no. When I was in high school, we were such knuckleheads where we loved exploring crazy things. So we would on a non-serious whatsoever level. My friends and I would go to there was literally an abandoned mental hospital that had been abandoned since the '60s, and we would go like straight up ghost hunter it, like explore it. We even got to a point that we learned there was like underground tunnels, and we went to Sports Authority.
They always have underground tunnels.
Dude, we were just
why do they always?
We were so obsessed with this.
Something's up.
We were so obsessed with walking through this place that we went to Sports Authority, put in all of our money, and bought like a rope ladder that we then hooked into the thing and went underground. But we loved it, and we would see stuff all the time that at the time we swore like this has got to be a ghost. Do I think it was a ghost? No, I think it was like the wind blowing something out over. That being said, so I've never had like
the wind blowing something over.
Yeah.
Ghosts are really good at that.
Granted,
That's
what
ghost,
want you to think.
or you'd have a moment where like a cold,
do.
you'd have a moment where you'd be like in July and a cold rush would come over and you'd be like, it's gotta be something.
Yeah.
So here's my answer to that is, again, it goes back to my original, I don't know. I love it. I love all that stuff in the sense of like, I look at the supernatural the same way I look at the extraterrestrial, where I'm like, no idea. Hope so.
Yeah.
That's very exciting and very fun. I've never firsthand had like my grandmother come back and tell me something, but I love the idea of the supernatural. I don't think if there is a demon or something like that, I don't know that it has anything to do with like the Christian version of that demon. It could be the Muslim demon, it could be whatever you think of. Do I think there's something more to an afterlife in terms of a ghost or a demon? As much as I think there's aliens, which is like, I hope so.
Yeah.
I think the real answer is, are we going to do a movie in the future about ghosts? Probably.
Yeah.
Are we going to do a movie about aliens? Probably.
But also, if you're ready to hold a seance and summon some demons or ghosts, we can do it.
No part of me thinks they're so real that I'm afraid of them. I'm like, I'm super into it. I'm like, let's go for it.
Summon them up.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What's your answer, Kevin?
Wait, demons, yes or no?
Or
demons?
ghosts or paranormal, anything paranormal.
Whatever your question
Or
was.
Jesus.
Or Jesus. So Jesus,
Which
big,
would also be
big
a ghost
fan.
at this point.
Also at this point.
Yeah. Holy. God.
Holy.
So, on the spot here. Jesus, big fan. I think that my story is that my grandmother told me about heaven and hell when I was 7 and put me on the spot to make a decision.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Indoctrinated.
Yeah. So just,
I was 4.
Yeah. It stuck with me.
Yeah.
I think
Who
that
says hell in that conversation, by the way?
What's that?
Who says hell in that conversation?
With my grandmother? Like,
with any 7-year-old or 4-year-old.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know.
I choose hell.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah.
Well, that's your
It was an
hand.
easy decision.
I don't know, Grandma. I'm unsure.
That's my
Some
point.
4-year-old's like, I choose hell.
I'm
my point.
agnostic.
That's like a magician that wants you to pull the card.
I've been watching. I was watching this movie Faith Based, and they curse a lot. I want to do that. Can I still do that? No.
Let me tell you something. Yes.
That's
yes,
a gray area.
Okay. Yeah.
You definitely can.
So, but my experience through all the the church and non-church activities was to see the truth, the explicitness in it, see the falling away in it, and I never personally like those experiences. The cold, I would get the warm experiences, or the cold experiences, depending on the choices I was making, and if I knew those choices were the right choices or not.
Sure. Of course.
And so to me, it still resonated. And by the time I got to high school, I'd had enough of those experiences and the story. We're all storytellers. I think you guys have made a great story, a great redemptive story, and the story to me the story makes sense. It makes sense, and I'm like you, like the supernatural, the extraterrestrial. Like I got deep dived on Netflix into some guy who believes in the extraterrestrial and all this stuff. I was like, is it real? Because I'm just curious.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So
So it feels egotistical to think there's not something else out there in this giant universe. But again, never seen it. No.
Yeah.
Or to be so certain that you know the answer either way.
Yeah.
Unless
you've seen
well, not just aliens, but even talking about Jesus or religion or whatever. To say I'm so certain that this is what happened or this is not what happened. I think is the problem.
Yeah.
It's like because none of us know.
Yeah.
None of us know.
There's this. I had this great experience where I just had this. I call it being born again when I was in my 40s and realized I would, heading down this like road of like corporate film, real cozy, but it wasn't what I was called to do. It was called to make movies, and I'm a little slow. I didn't realize it was comedy movies at the time. But I was shooting a corporate film, and there was a archaeologist, and I was like, oh cool, I love Jurassic Park, you know, and he was like, oh that's science is like 10 years old, you know, it's all fake, you know. And I'm like, oh, they believed it 10 years ago, and then that's what inspired the movie, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had that conversation, and later on, the conversation got around to like other things, like, you know, spirits and whatever, and this guy was like, he was like hard and fast, like, no, that's not true. Like the spirit world, demons, or whatever we started talking about. And I was like, pause a second. You have been studying this world that hasn't existed for thousands of years. And 10 years ago, you guys believed something. That's where he stopped me. He's like, no, we didn't believe it. We knew it 10 years ago. Now we know something different. And I'm like, you believed something different, and now you got more experiences that make you believe. And
so the truth can
the archaeologist couldn't wrap his head around the belief in new things that were proved by today's science. So I guess my thing is like, you have to be open-minded.
Yeah.
If you're an archaeologist and you're like, this is the only thing that exists, and then you discover, you dig somewhere else and you're like, oh, that exists.
What you're talking about is this is one of the most beautiful things in life. It's the dichotomy between science and religion, right? Science is heralded as being 100% true until you can prove it wrong, right? That's how our science gets better, is we prove old science wrong, and then we have new science, which is better and more accurate, and which is why 100 years ago, or a couple hundred years ago, they might like cut open a part of your brain, and now they don't do these things, right? It's very basic, very sort of basic thing, bloodletting and things like that.
Yeah.
But then, like, religion, however, is a variable dependent upon culture of the time, right? Where it's like, do you interpret the Bible as the Word of God, or do you interpret the Bible as a living document? Right? Because, like, some people interpret it as the Word of God, in which it is not open to evolution, and I don't mean evolution like monkeys to man. I mean evolution in terms of like how we consider it. Yeah. It is a fact. It is clear.
It doesn't change.
It does not change.
Right.
Versus, does it change to reflect the interpretation, like fire and brimstone, early America, 1500s, right? Versus America now. Like, well, I would argue that the Christian church in John Winthrop or something was his name, right? Fire and brimstone. Like, that guy is like not down with the things that are Joel Osteen's.
Sinners in the hands of an angry God.
There we go.
Versus like, if you give me $10,000,
and so it's like, do we allow science to evolve? Do we allow religion to evolve as well?
Are we open-minded about both? Can the archaeologist, can we say, I don't know about aliens, about I wasn't there when dinosaurs roamed the earth, so here's my best guess.
Well, I've always had an issue with, like, so many people use the chair as an analogy for belief.
Yeah.
Where they say, like, I don't know that this chair is going to hold me up when I sit down on it, but I believe that it will. And that's believing in Jesus. And my thing has always been like, well, you still don't know if that chair's going to hold you up.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know. It might totally collapse as soon as you sit down there. You hope it holds up. You have confidence it's going to hold up. You believe in the sense that, like, you are.
There's also certain laws of physics that tell you that chair's going to hold you up. Where a belief in Jesus, there's no laws of physics there necessarily.
It's really.
If you are so set on the idea that, like, this is 100% how it is, I know that, then unless you like saw this happen, you don't know this. You're believing it in that sense.
Well, here's the other thing: is then we get into like, pardon me. This is when we get into listen.
As he starts,
I know we don't have time. I know we don't have time for this. I'm just gonna pour a little nip. I just pour just a little bit, just a little nip here. But this is when we get into shit like Leviticus, where it's like, you shall not have a cloth made from the thread of like two different animals or something. Yeah. Like that is straight up in Leviticus, and then just a couple chapters later, it's like you shall not adorn. It's the tattoos thing, right? So it's like a conservative Christian church latches onto tattoos, but they'll wear a poly blend real quick. You know.
And then later find a verse in the New Testament that says, "Well, it changed as soon as this happened."
Yeah. What is it? You don't. Do you pick and choose? Or
there's a lot. I think there's a lot of people. One thing I like about the show and like about honest answers, no matter what you believe or coming from, or if you would put a label on yourself or not, I think there's not enough discussion. There's not enough open-mindedness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
To just have these conversations and to learn from each other and learn perspectives. Because even if you and I don't share the same religious belief or scientific understanding or whatever it is, or cultural upbringing.
Totally.
You know, we can learn from each other, and if we remain open-minded, we remain ready to learn. So
it's a great way to put it.
Thank you for that.
After the podcast, I want to learn from you guys as producers, because like I love where you guys are going and what you're doing. It's kind of when I saw this film, I think everybody in class was like, "Kevin, these guys are here to speak to you." So thank you guys
awesome, man.
Hey, tell us more about this film. Promote it a little bit. What's happening?
Yes.
If you can see it in Japan, is what I heard so far.
So
if you gotta go to Japan.
If you want to see our movie, you have to take a plane to Tokyo, which we're not allowed to go to right now because of the pandemic. No, it's coming out. It's coming out October 9th. We're rolling out in theaters. We're on all the VOD platforms. The theater thing is like a day by day thing. Yeah. So like
essentially anywhere you could purchase or rent a movie, it will be available.
Awesome. I highly recommend it. And are you guys going to do like a PG version?
We're doing the editing version. It's only 30 minutes long.
Luke and Tanner like.
We're not in it. Tanner and I aren't in it.
That's actually the more popular version.
It's just Parent Space.
It's just Richard Really very happy to be the space monster.
Literally just Richard
Really.
Really.
Awesome.
It's called A Prayer in Space.
Yeah. I love it, dude. I love the movie. It's called Faith Based. It's a great film.
Thank you.
Whatever your religion, it's a great film. Thanks, guys. I got 2 more questions. They're only for our patrons.
Oh, good for you, Patreon. Hell yeah.
All right, so if you don't know, you can go over to patreon.com/funny&amen, FUNNYANDAMEN. Patreon spelled PATREON.com, and go over there. We're asking 2 real quick questions, and thank you guys for being here.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great.